So in 2013, I gave a TED talk on this, and that was talking about introducing this concept. And this, I guess, this is when Bitcoin was really headed into its heyday. In 2014, I gave a talk here about of TED as well, TEDx, on how the ICO market was going to disrupt the IPO market and the venture capital market. In 2017, the ICO market became larger than the venture capital market in terms of amounts raised. And now in 2018, we're going through the regulatory environment that we went through back in 2010 to turn those tokens into securities. In 2015, we decided to leave the UK and set up a global structure because our industry was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and allow people to invest in some of the most valuable companies in the industry. And so some of the portfolio companies we got here are some of the largest exchange. Our investors on Bank to the Future all own shares in these companies: Bitfinex, BitPay, Kraken, Bitstamp, some of the largest, most valuable companies in our industry today. And we're looking later this year to launch a secondary market, and I'll tell you how this all applies together. In 2017, we decided that the regulatory environment was strong enough to actually start issuing these tokens in compliance with securities laws. So we launched the BF token in 2017, and it was designed to solve some of the problems that we have on the Bank to the Future platform. In terms of whenever we launch a new deal, it often gets sold out very quickly. So we allowed our token holders to gain priority access to those deals. We were finding challenges as we were getting 30 applications a day, as more and more companies were looking to use the blockchain in this industry to raise funding. We couldn't keep up with it, so we created a rewards program using the token for people that conduct due diligence and investor relations. And later this year, we're launching our secondary market, so all of those companies that we've invested in equity, you'll now be able to, hopefully, as this launches, trade shares in some of the most valuable companies in the industry. Which brings us to the securities token market as well. Here in 2018, here's where we launched the token. We filed it all with the SEC. We did our filings. We were forecasting a long time ago. That's why we started working on the securities laws in 2010. That these tokens, which were disrupting the industry, would actually end up being securities in the end. And so whenever anyone that did a token sale through our platform did it in compliance with securities laws in an extremely fast-changing and innovative environment. So what I wanted to do is end with some forecasts on where I think this industry is going next. And just to reiterate some of the trends that we've been through. So it all started for us with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, as we said, it allows you to own your own money, spend your own money, and it has a monetary policy based upon savings and debt. Bitcoin, without a doubt, is the best shot our world has of achieving sound money again. And the reason that it's a good shot at achieving sound money is because it is the only currency the world has ever seen that can be spent digitally, can be owned by anybody, regardless of politics, color, gender, racial, sexual preference. You can use Bitcoin. That's the first time we've ever seen that. It can transact globally with anyone, and no one can tell you that you can't. It is censorship resistant, and it is not owned or controlled by anybody. We are never going to create that again. My forecast is that Bitcoin is a one-time freak experiment that will never be repeated again. It was created at a time when nobody cared. It had sufficient time to become decentralized where there was no one you could arrest in order to take it down. It got so much security in a time when nobody cared that now it is statistically and financially impossible for almost any government to take down Bitcoin, even if they want to. So now every government around the world needs to adjust to what their policy is. And the policy that they adjust to will shape the future of their financial system. The reason being is because when I go around the world and I speak to small central banks, they are betting on Bitcoin. They are betting on displacing the dollar, displacing Wall Street, displacing Silicon Valley as a hub and geographical hub for all the startups. They're looking at ICOs as their leapfrog for the stock markets. They're looking at securities tokens as their way to remove the dependence upon startups on Silicon Valley. They're looking at Bitcoin as a way of carving out their power. I'll give you a classic example. Bulgaria confiscated some Bitcoin from somebody that they believed were using it for illicit activities. A few years later, they looked at that hard drive and they realized that the value of their Bitcoins on that hard drive was worth more than their entire national debt. Bulgaria is one of the only surplus countries in Eastern Europe as a result of that. Now, central banks around the world, the small central banks, will realize that there's a game theory going on here. The first to speculate on Bitcoin and speculate big, potentially, because Bitcoin has this fixed money supply and is a better reserve currency than gold for many central banks, they actually are in a game theory where the first to adopt will be the big winners. Now, if you're a central bank that is not significant in this world, betting on having some Bitcoin is a really, really good risk-reward adjusted bet. And so the smaller central banks will start accumulating Bitcoin. This starts to make Bitcoin a central reserve backed, a world reserve currency. At the moment, Bitcoin is a the world reserve cryptocurrency for cryptocurrencies. I'm forecasting eventually that the large economies, the large central banks, the last one to buy Bitcoin will be the US, and that will be because the US dollar is the most powerful and useful currency in the world. But this game theory is gonna happen at some point. It may take 5-10 years to play out, but there will be a race for the cheap Bitcoins over the next 10 years. They halve every 4 years, and people just need to play the economics. Crashes are the ideal time to get yourself on the right side of that trend. We had the Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden the equity market. So at the time we were accumulating lots of equity in the companies, and as the market boomed and grew and started to take more and more of the financial sector, the equity becomes more interesting. Then everyone wanted to try and displace Bitcoin and create their version of Bitcoin, and you had this altcoin boom. Then Ethereum came along. We invested in the Ethereum ICO. It was funded by the Bitcoin community. And that created, a couple of years later, the token and ICO boom. After that, you had hard forks. Everyone that owned Bitcoin was given some free Bitcoin Cash and some free Bitcoin Gold and some free Bitcoin Diamonds, which acted like a dividend as a reward for holding Bitcoin. And so what you'll notice is the theme here. The longer-term investor is rewarded in crypto. The short-term speculator and the person that borrows tends to be the one that lose all their money in crypto. And so Bitcoin and this crypto industry has created an economy based upon savings. When you meet Bitcoiners, they don't want to sell their Bitcoin. They're accumulating. And it's a built economy based upon saving. In 2017, young people came along and they thought they could take $10, $100 and speculate on an altcoin or a cryptocurrency. And those same people are never going to invest in stocks. They're never going to buy gold. They're not interested in the bond market. They're only interested in the crypto market. So the whole next generation is coming along and affiliating itself with this market, which means that that's a problem for pension funds, that's a problem for the hedge fund industry, that's a problem for traditional financial markets, because people's behaviors are completely changing. So earlier this year, all the hedge funds got involved in Bitcoin and crypto trading, increased the volume, the exchanges that we invested in, the number of hedge funds that were signing up for accounts. And then later this year, custodial solutions come into play, which allows pension funds to invest through essentially your money into the crypto industry. And all these trends are going to play out. In 2020, Bitcoin halves. That turns the market round. But as we said, the last bear market lasted about a year and a half, and we're only 7 months into that. So, what we're experiencing right now is probably halfway to where we're actually going. So in 2018,